And not. Good morning. This is Wednesday, June 29. We are going to begin our council time agenda with 2 executive sessions. And the first thing I have to do is apologize to those people who are here for the for the council time, and know that it is our desire to put executive sessions only at the end. But in this particular case, it was recommended by council that we do so. And so that's the way that it is this time. Those sessions will last, one of them dealing with potential litigation, RCW 42.30.110, Section 1I, for 15 minutes. And then the same section on another potential litigation for 10. It is now 9:05. I expect us to return into this room, beginning with public comment at that time at 9:35. Good morning again. This is Wednesday, June 29. We have been in Clark County Council 2 executive sessions, and we are back and ready to open the council time agenda. It is 9:35, and we will begin, as you know, with public comment. We now give the opportunity for public comment on any item that is on today's council time agenda. So you know that this is not the time for talk about things that will be coming up next week or whatever. It's about those items that are on today's council time agenda. So if you wish to speak, if you are present in the hearing room, please indicate to staff. If you're calling in, raise *3 to raise your hand. And if you're at your computer, please use the raised hand icon. Staff, are there individuals who wish to testify? I'm sorry to interrupt, but if there is testimony that is underway, it is, I cannot hear it. And maybe other people can't either. And I see that you are stopping the clock, staff, and thank you for that, so that the individual testifying has her full time.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So I'm commenting on the public comment provision that you adopted. And I've been concerned not because it's good to have an opportunity for a citizen to comment, but because you've changed the dynamics of the council time. And before I run out of time, I do think that changes the rules of procedure, which say the council time is to discuss pending matters of county business in a less formal setting. Now, I know you talked about it at the retreat and at a further council session, that there were legal requirements that you change. When I check the MSRC site, it specifically says not all regular meetings are subject to public comment requirement, only those at which final action is taken. Final action means a collective positive or negative decision or an actual vote by the majority of the members of a governing body. when setting as a body or entity upon a motion, proposal, resolution, order, or ordinance. Now, there are two reasons why I object to the change in format to taking final action at council time. One is you've removed a valuable opportunity for the 5 councillors to be in one place at one time discussing things informally without taking a vote. It's a time when you could talk about things coming up, research you wanted, things that you wanted to ask staff about, and it was really useful without running into chain meetings or serial discussions. The second point is that it's really hard for the public now to know when things will be coming up, how they will be acted upon. It used to be really clear weekly on Tuesday, and if your agenda's got too heavy on Tuesdays, that you want to do things in council time, well, I've got a minute. Then you shouldn't be doing that on final actions. The public doesn't really have a clear idea on the agenda. We do have the Arts Commission document here, but we don't have anything about Chilachi Prairie, and we have no idea what new business on the interstate bridge could possibly be after this many years. So you haven't really added transparency. You've created another barrier to citizen participation. So I can come here and I can comment without having a clue what council is going to be doing. I think council time used to be useful. We got an idea. There was time to think before the public meeting, a minimum of 6 days from when something was brought up at council time till it came up on the hearing. And as I repeated at the beginning, if you are going to change this, then I think you need a change in the rules of procedure by ordinance in a regular meeting. Thank you for the opportunity anyway. Thanks.
Thank you for your perspective. And we didn't hear your name at the beginning. If you would not mind giving that. You probably gave it before the microphones were working.
I'm sorry. My name's Bridget McCleeman.
Thank you, Bridget. Okay, is there anyone else who wishes to testify?
I do not see anyone in person, but we do have a hand raised online. Jackie Lane, please go ahead with your comment.
Hi, good morning, councilors. I would like to say I agree with Bridget, so I won't add to that, but I had that on my list. The agenda for this meeting was posted at the very last minute, so it makes it very hard for the public to comment on anything there and not knowing in depth what those items were there for. Having the executive session at the start makes it extremely difficult for the public to participate in these meetings. And the Chilachi thing, I mean, what is that about? It's really hard to know because I thought that was a closed issue. Ditto the bridge. Like I said, this format, I'm agreeing with Bridget, makes it really hard for the public to rationally and intelligently participate and comment on things going on. I hope you will reconsider. Thank you.
Thank you. And Chair Bowerman, I believe that is everyone who wishes to comment today.
Okay, thank you. We move to old business minutes for June 22. Is there a motion for approval?
Motion
So
to-
moved.
Or second.
Okay, any objections or changes to those minutes? Hearing none, they stand approved as written. Arts Commission MOU. Kathleen or Lindsay, who is taking the lead on this? Or Leslie?
I can start. The county has been in negotiations with regards to the Arts Commission MOU. There are certain terms that we need to negotiate in all of our contracts. One of the terms right now is regarding the insurance requirements that are required in our contracts. So we're looking for council for direction on that provision specifically and how you want county staff to continue with those conversations. They are not inclined to agree to the county's provision that does create a liability. It is a standard process and language that we use with all of our contracts. But of course, the council does have the option to either give direction to continue to move forward with those negotiations, including that language, or to accept liability and the risk and to not include those provisions. Chair?
First, is there additional staff comment? And then I believe that was Counselor Lentz, and you'll be next.
Yeah.
Additional staff comment?
I don't have
Okay.
something further. Thank
Counselor
you.
Lentz.
Thank you. I'm glad to see this MOU coming before us soon. As far as the provision for insurance, what is in the MOU that is posted and that we have drafted is very reasonable and really standard for most arrangements between parties where there is a third party taking action, having to have insurance for your organization, and also then to be able to have a certificate naming an additional insured is very standard and affordable. So I'm curious about the nature of the conflict, and I don't know, staff, if your conversations with the nonprofit have illuminated if this is simply an opposition to having insurance. I'm curious if the organization itself is insured, and if so, what the opposition is to having an additional certificate. If they're not insured, that raises a lot of other questions for me about the organization. But I also understand procedurally that there may be some problem here, simply that the back and forth, I'm led to believe, was not necessarily well communicated, and that this provision for insurance may have surprised the members of the nonprofit when it came before them. So there may be just simply some communication problems as well. So my request would be to have staff go back and have another conversation with the representatives for the nonprofit to get a better understanding of where the problem and conflict is, because as presented, I don't see a problem with this MOU. Thank you.
So I can provide a little bit more information, and Kathleen, feel free to add at the end if there's things that I'm missing. But so we've had conversations with both representatives from the Columbia Arts Network, from CAN, and from the Arts Commission. And what it really boils down to, we requested a copy of their certificate of insurance. We were told they don't have one. The insurance that, in order to obtain insurance for the financial liability piece, which they don't currently have, in order to obtain that type of insurance, we'd be talking roughly $1,000 for a policy. And given and I haven't shopped around personally for this type of insurance, so I don't know if perhaps there are other options, but taking them at their word that this is the cheapest insurance that they were able to find that met the criteria, they were concerned that, they're really only looking at roughly $3,000 a year of money coming in and out of the account, and spending $1,000 of that a year on insurance was really impractical from their point of view. And so the impasse came around by the county saying, well, if we don't have insurance and we have a claim, even if the claim is relatively de minimis, our insurance company, the county's insurance company, is going to ask us, why aren't you requiring insurance on behalf of this other entity? And so there could be issues with our insurance merely by the fact that we aren't requiring the insurance of the other entity, irrespective of how de minimis the claim itself may be. Of course, if it's a larger claim, that's certainly a liability. But I know that CAN and the Arts Commission are saying, well, really, what's the maximum liability we could have here? And it's not necessarily just a question of, oh, it's possible we could have $100 claim here. It's also possible that we could run into challenges, and I would defer to our insurance staff, but that we could have challenges with our insurance company and questions about why we didn't require that insurance. So the impasse has come around because the county is saying, we really need you to have this level of insurance. The Arts Commission and CAN are saying, in order to obtain even that lower level of insurance, it would cost us around $1,000 a year for a policy. And so that comes back to what Kathleen alluded to in the beginning, which is we can proceed forward, but there are some bigger issues to consider before doing that.
Chair, may I just follow up?
Please. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. No, thanks, Lindsay. I appreciate that. I don't know that it's necessarily the council or staff's job to do insurance shopping for a third party. So if that is what they are claiming the cost is, then so it is. I'm going to maintain that having a basic policy of insurance is standard practice for any operating nonprofit, and they should have it, and they should have had it before our conversations even began. So I still wonder if there's a bit of miscommunication here, but I would say that my inclination at this time is to proceed with what we have. Thanks.
So if I may,
Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Councilor Medvici.
Yeah, thanks. So I think I've been included on all the communication from the various people within the organization and pretty much funneled everything back to Kathleen and Lindsay. I think what Lindsay said really summarizes what has transpired and where we're at. It's a great organization that I'm hopeful will be able to work this out. But I think we should take one more attempt at maybe one more meeting with Lindsay and their leadership just to say, hey, this is the way it is. We can't change our risk management system. We have an obligation to all taxpayers to manage it the way we do. The lawyers have advised us on what the potential risks are. Should we grant one exception and not require insurance? And then, of course, there may be other nonprofits similarly situated that will want the same exception. So I agree wholeheartedly with what was stated by Councillor Lenz, but would just advocate that Lindsay should meet one more time with the organization to see if they can meet the requirements to have a signed MOU. Obviously, the one we have in place was not agreed upon by the county and the organization with a full understanding of all the terms.
Councilor Rylander?
I think we're in agreement, or at least I'm in agreement with the comments that have been made to this particular point. We cannot put the county at liability risk. It is the applicant's job to show that they have sufficient insurance, and what the cost is what the cost is.
I concur as well. Would there be advantage, and this is just a question to Lindsay, Leslie, and Kathleen, to having Leslie accompany Lindsay in the discussions with CAN so that the perspective that you voiced to us earlier, Leslie, were to be known by them of the position of the county?
I'm certainly available to do that. Lindsay, you and I can chat afterwards if that works for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to coordinate with Leslie and we can set up a meeting with the folks from CAN and the Arts Commission.
Okay, have we given enough discussion to that at this point? We're ready to move on, I believe.
Yeah, and I'm just following up from our conversations from Rules of Procedure. I just want for the record to state that all counselors here today are in support of staff moving forward, keeping the insurance language and negotiating. So just want to summarize the council's direction for the record.
And
thank you.
That is indeed correct. About all counselors being in agreement. Item 3.3, the Chalachi Bluff Surface Mining Overlay. I'd like to begin on this just for purposes of clarity with a motion.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
Councilor Rylander.
I make a motion to set a hearing to review the March 15th, 2022 request CPZ 2021-00006 on July 19th, 2022.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion.
Well, if I may, Madam Chair, we've had some discussion in open session regarding the confusion or inadequacy of Robert's rules as it applies to split votes when we didn't have a full council. We had a number of 2-2 votes, so no prevailing party, no losing party. The action just got lost. And then where we barely had a quorum, a 2-1 vote, which doesn't make for efficient government or full government now that we have 5 councilors. So there's an inadequacy that may take some time to change procedural rules to remedy. And I am making that proposal that we address that in the future, or at the same time that we review some of these prior actions that really didn't move forward and kind of got lost in limbo. So I'm hopeful that we can change our procedural rules of voting to add some efficiency when we have a majority of the council that actually want to accomplish a decision or action. So I am looking to address Robert rules to add more detail when we have a 2-1 vote or a 2-2 split. And as I understand that the timeline for changing or potentially changing that procedural rule will take some amount of time.
Thank you, Counselor. And in addition to discussion of Robert's rules, is there discussion on the substance of the motion? Counselor Rylander, you made the motion. Do you wish to comment?
Sorry, my motion is my comment.
Okay, very good. Well, I concur with the motion. And I recall that at the time of the vote taken on March 15, there were 3 councilors present, and it was a 2-1 vote at that time. So this would be presumably a time when a greater portion or all 5 of the councilors would be present at the hearing on July 19. Further discussion? So hearing none, the motion has been made. I'm going to abbreviate this to set a hearing on July 19 to review the March 15 vote on the Chelatchie Bluff surface mining overlay. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. And those opposed?
No.
The vote is 3-1, and it therefore passes. Let's move now to new business, which is on the I-5 bridge replacement. Have all of the councilors received a white paper and a resolution draft on this subject?
Yes.
Let me ask you this way, is there any counselor who hasn't?
I received it from Lindsay and reviewed
Chair.
it this morning. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Counselor, I didn't realize we were talking at the same time. Go ahead.
I was just answering the question that I did receive it from Lindsay and reviewed it this morning.
And Counselor Lance?
It did come in the email yesterday afternoon, but have not had a chance to thoroughly review it, and it wasn't posted until mid-afternoon yesterday either. So I have skimmed it, but have not had the chance to take a close look at it.
Okay, got it. So clearly this would be something that would need a great deal of discussion. Kathleen, how would you like to proceed?
If Chair, if you want to go over and summarize it today for council, you can certainly do that. We can also move this to next Wednesday's agenda item so that council has additional time to review and consider for the discussion. You could do both. You can still provide an overview and continue the conversation next Wednesday. And then if the council wants to move forward with any resolution, those I would recommend be on a Tuesday meeting. So if that is not recommended today, it would not make it for next Tuesday's meeting, but we could consider that for July 19th.
Madam Chair,
Councillor Rylander?
I have reviewed the material, including the resolution, and I have but one suggested change. Is it appropriate to suggest that change at this point or not?
Yes, indeed.
If you move to line 40, it reads agility in responding to, and I would suggest the addition of a word, either changing or evolving. So agility in responding to changing transportation needs of the area, or substitute the word evolving, responding to evolving transportation changes of the area.
I'm certainly happy with the word evolving. Are there any objections to adding that? Our transportation needs are evolving as we add more people, more cars, more trucks, and maybe light rail. So I'll go back first to what we can call the white paper that precedes the resolution, in the sense that it kind of makes a base for what is contained in the resolution. The first paragraph on what the people want just summarizes the different surveys that have been taken over time, and in particular, the one that the IBR team reported, that 78% of Washington's residents have as their top priority reducing traffic congestion and saving time, well, because that is what can make the trip duration be more predictable, particularly for freight. The status is that IBR's estimating now that the total cost for the I-5 bridge replacement would be between 3.2 billion and 4.8 billion, with Washington having already committed $1 billion. And then subsequently, there was another 100 million that was allocated from the Connecting Washington package for the Mill Plain I-5 interchange. So a total of 1,100,000 from the state of Washington. To my knowledge, the state of Oregon and others have not indicated at this point how much they are willing to give, if any. But the locally preferred alternative that has been modified and is contained in IBR's materials at this time is very relevant for us understanding what is being proposed. And if you go on down to the graphic that is there, rather than trying to summarize in words, there are many, many pages of what is entailed in this in this approach. This graphic really summarizes a great deal of it, with there being a partial interchange at Hayden Island, which is explained in great detail in their materials, by the way. Auxiliary lanes, one, their transit choice is not the bus rapid transit, but light rail, and that there would be a variable rate of tolling with that amount yet unspecified. So that's a really huge summary of what is proposed in the locally preferred alternative at this time. If we skip over to rapid transit across the bridge, this paper takes the position that bus from CTRAN would be an ideal choice compared to TriMet's Max Yellow Line light rail. And in part, the reason is embedded in cost, but not entirely. But as far as cost is concerned, without additional taxes for one cost that is doable for C-Tran. The bus rapid transit would be a possibility. It appears that with TriMet's Max Yellow Line light rail, there would be additional tax necessary because this would not be covered for Vancouver, but would need to be paid for by Vancouver for the part that is Clark County, by the part that is located within Clark County. So there would be a cost probably from 1.3 to 1.8 million additional on that. And then the fact of what the voters have said about, I said million, it's 1.3 to 1.8 billion dollars for that light rail. The M's and the B's are kind of overwhelming to me. I'm sorry. There's the history of what Clark County voters have said about the possibility of light rail and the 3 times that it has come up for vote, starting back as early as 1995, to my knowledge. It has been voted down by the Clark County voters, or it was stated that before light rail was a consideration, it should be something that was actually voted on and approved, at least in an advisory vote by the people of Clark County. Then the next major point is that of accommodating freight. There is the very huge likelihood that the number of trucks of 13,500 that were crossing the bridge in 2019 will be exponentially increased. We are already at the 23rd worst truck bottleneck in the nation because of congestion. And then there is the matter of relief of congestion as the last major point in the white paper. And that is that predictions by the IBR team is that by 2045, that vehicles going through the traffic on the bridge would be traveling between 0 and 20 miles per hour, and that there would actually be time added to the commutes by up to half an hour for the people that were having to go on the bridge. So for those reasons, the resolution here will call for a 4th automobile through lane. So if, we could talk about that for a long time. I think the easiest way to do it would be through the resolution, because that's where we get more specific. So if we could take a look at that, the whereases are largely taken from what you just heard in the white paper. So the last section is, be it ordered and resolved by the Clark County Council as follows, that and this is on page 2, yes, there you are, that the Clark County Council supports replacement of the I-5 interstate bridge in a manner that supports relief of traffic congestion and seismic safety, but calling there for both. The County Council opposes every light rail project in Clark County unless it is first supported by a majority of the voters in a countywide advisory vote of the people. But we do support C-Trans bus rapid transit as the best alternative for rapid transit on the I-5 bridge because of its cost effectiveness and its effectiveness in serving riders, in its agility in responding to, as you said, the evolving transportation needs of the area. Then section 3, that we support creation of a truck-only lane on the bridge. And section 4, that we call for a 4th passenger vehicle through lane on the I-5 bridge. And then lastly is just reinforcing that we have already taken the position in support of a 3rd bridge crossing being investigated and planned for between or crossing the Columbia River between Clark County and Oregon. And so it's just reinforcing that statement again. I apologize for talking so long and so much, but I think that does cover the essence of it. And it's open for discussion and comment, please.
Madam Chair, may I?
Yes, Councilor.
So I don't think you talked for too long. I want to add a couple of points to this initial discussion. You know, I've been, I'm sorry, is there someone else talking or echo? No. Okay, well, I was hearing something back. Anyway, I fully support this resolution. Certainly we can parse through words, and I do want to add a broader concept for a little bit more emphasis in it. The white paper, although new to me in the last couple of days, you know, I've really seen most of this material presented at the RTC in different ways. So it's not new material, but there are a couple of points that I think are worth mentioning. One, this county council is not part of the Bi-State Bridge Committee. You know, we don't sit as CTRAN does or the City Council of Vancouver. We do have representation on RTC, CTRAN, and freight mobility, statewide freight mobility boards, but we really don't have a seat at the table during all these discussions. And I had raised this before at the RTC that I don't understand how this is morphing the way it is. And there is some time constraints here right now because they're trying to collect resolutions in support of this locally preferred option right now. We're going to hear it at the RTC pretty soon. I've already pushed back as much as I could with my concerns at RTC. So I think it's very important that the county council, because we don't have a seat at the table, speak up. So I agree with the thrust of what's contained, the detail in the white paper, as well as what this resolution speaks to. The point I want to emphasize is, you know, this is all about an old bridge that doesn't meet engineering standards, and there's no practical way to retrofit it to be seismically fit by today's standards. And you know, one of the bridge's footings are in mud. So it's impractical, as well as the other part of this is it's an old bridge, and at some point, and we're seeing that now, maintenance becomes more costly ultimately than replacing and putting in a brand new bridge. So we got all that. We understand we need to replace the bridge. The lift and transit on the Columbian is another factor that's significant, especially with even the proposed span not being tall enough. Where I thought it morphed, and I don't know how this happened, but all of a sudden we're talking about tolling, and Oregon's talking about value pricing as well on top of it. We've suddenly added light rail. You know, we're doing nothing to increase freight mobility. We're doing nothing to relieve congestion. And the moral of all of this is resiliency and redundancy of that bridge during a seismic event as we look out into the future. The only way to really achieve all of those goals is another corridor. another bridge, another tunnel, a light rail separate, heavy rail separate, ferry service. You get redundancy and resiliency by having additional mechanisms. I just point to the Loma Prieta earthquake because I was living in the Bay Area at the time. You know, we had the Golden Gate Bridge, the San Rafael Bridge, the San Mateo Bridge, and a robust ferry system at a time when the Bay Bridge, a major connector, collapsed. So, you know, you alleviate congestion by additional corridors, additional lanes, dedicated lanes for freight. You don't do it, you don't get any congestion relief, and you lose the ability to have redundancy and resiliency with the plan that's now in place. One of the telling comments that came to the RTC, and I think was mostly missed, when we had a briefing on this locally preferred option, and I kind of asked some questions about how we got to this point, the answer was, to me, fairly striking, and I think kind of summarizes where we're at. You know, the failed CRC, the lessons learned by those pushing the project forward were not that the public didn't want light rail or tolling. The lesson learned was, hey, we didn't communicate this in the right way. So to be clear, what that means is, instead of saying, hey, we understand Southwest Washington may not want light rail at this time, they may want C-Tran. I'm a favor of C-Tran right now. It's a great transit. I would fully encourage people to ride it more frequently, but that should be our option right now. So we're going to ignore what Southwest Washington wants. What we learned from the failed proceedings years ago was that we just need to convince them in a different way. So the narrative has been that the learning lesson is the narrative, not the needs and wants of the people. We also heard that they did a poll themselves, and I think it was about 5,000 people. But, you know, we have over 3 million people in the greater Portland, Vancouver metropolitan area. So I don't know how valid a 5,000 populated poll and how the questions were asked. I don't see any validity or persuasion in that poll that the authority did to claim that transit light rail is the preferred option. So we need to speak up. We need to push back. We need to support a replacement bridge, but we need to get rid of all these bells and whistles, get back to considering what is best: a freight mobility lane, another passenger lane, something capable for buses right now to link up with the existing light rail transit. Practical steps that should be taken now so that we can actually see this new bridge being built. So I've been in favor of a resolution for the last few years for us to speak up. You know, I've been raising it to do our own planning within the county for another corridor. It just makes perfect sense, and we should be much farther along than we are right now. But this is getting out of hand. The timing is perfect. We need to speak up because they're collecting resolutions in favor of these options that people don't want.
Chair? I think you may be muted, so I will go ahead.
I think someone had muted me, and please do go ahead, Counselor.
Thank you. You know, as I try to review this somewhat on the fly, I appreciate many of the points that are raised, and some additional context for this part of the LPA process with the bridge project is that this is, as Councillor Medvedji was saying, this is the time for jurisdictions to bring forward their concerns and desires for the rest of the process. This isn't deciding on the final bridge. This is about what needs to be considered moving forward. And I understand every jurisdiction is being consulted about, you know, what are your needs and wants, where are your problems, so that they can be addressed moving forward. As Councillor Medvedji said, Clark County is not a jurisdictional partner in this process because the bridge project will fall entirely within the jurisdiction of the City of Vancouver. And I think that that also impacts, for me at least, that impacts where we can be where we can have the most influence on the process. I think that the way many of these points are worded, and I agree that how we handle freight and how we handle additional traffic are very important pieces. The section about the light rail project, I wanted to comment on something that Chair Bowerman said, because there's a presumption in that I don't believe is entirely accurate. Especially at this time in this version of the process. Was accurate for the CRC project, but not in this case. The presumption of additional tax for light rail is one that I have not seen evidenced in the process so far. And in fact, I'm hearing explicitly the opposite, which I think is good and is actually one of the key things that is different about this process than the last one. And especially CTRAN in this case heard much of the opposition the last time around and is standing very firm on a few points. The main point, and that we've heard from CTRAN staff throughout, and that my understanding is that the agreements that are going to be brought forward to the CTRAN board will contain language that CTRAN staff have been very consistent about throughout the entire IBR process so far, which is that Clark County residents, CTRAN taxpayers, will not be paying for the light rail portion of this, and that they have been adamant about that. And I expect to see that in writing proposed to the CTRAN board here in the next few weeks as well. The City of Vancouver, in whose jurisdiction this entirely falls, has supported having light rail come into downtown. And they have been very strong about the route that it should take and where it should stop, and that it shouldn't go further than that spot just south of 10th Street. So the City of Vancouver, which will be the jurisdiction that is most impacted by this, has supported it. CTRAN has said, we have heard, and we will stand firm that no Clark County voter, no Clark County taxpayer should pay for light rail terminating in Clark County and then going back across the bridge. I would love to see the Clark County Council support that. If the concern about light rail is largely based on cost, then supporting this effort to be sure that we don't have to pay for it would be a strong position that would actually, in my opinion, do more to keep us at the table and relevant in the conversation. I would love to see a rework of Section 2 that said, instead of simply opposing the light rail, that we adjusted some of the language to say that if at any time this project requires Clark County or CTRAN money for light rail, then it would require a vote of the people. I feel like that would actually take us further than the language as written.
Madam Chair, I agree with what Councillor Lentz just raised, and I just want to emphasize too, because you had pointed out, named some dollar figures. What is really known right now is we have no idea what light rail is going to cost. It's going to be $1 billion to several $billions. No one knows the actual cost right now to support that kind of breadth and depth of costs is really kind of absurd at this point. And I understand, because I raised it at RTC and we got back from WISTOT. Basically, well, that's the process. We won't, until we get further, we're not going to know the cost. But one of the points that Councilor Rentz raised that I really don't have a firm understanding of, obviously, there's always the initial capital costs and then ongoing maintenance costs. The ongoing maintenance costs, I thought and believe that is in place right now with Metro. You know, you have a taxing district that goes hand in hand with a light rail extension. So I don't know that it's worthy to raise and make a comment about, because I think, you know, however adamant CTRAN might be about taxpayers not paying for it, I think there will be a taxing district. I've never heard anything different. If light rail comes up here, it comes with a taxing district. It's an additional tax. Yes, it may be borne almost exclusively within the city of Vancouver, but Vancouver's in Clark County and Southwest Washington and will have an impact on all of us. So I think those are all good points. And I think we can add a little bit more to highlight those issues.
Thank you.
One of the things that I certainly don't pretend to have is any inside knowledge beyond what is out in the public arena on the topic of costs or who covers what cost, because we're not a part of as has been pointed out several times, Clark County is not a part of that decision-making process per se on the board. But I will say that I listened to a June 17 discussion that was taped and is available to the public, in which it was stated that TriMet will not cover light rail O&M costs into Vancouver, and that the approximate cost of the two different approaches, $50 million for a bus on the bridge, the rapid transit, or 1.3 billion estimated on the light rail. So taxation aside, there is a difference in cost. However, that is not the only reason, as is explained in the white paper, for having a preference for the bus transit system. There are other reasons that the public has voted against light rail in the past, and until another vote is taken, we would not have any reason to believe that those opinions of the public have changed. So that's the derivation of those points. Is there any further discussion?
Chair?
Yes, Councilor Lentz.
Thank you. I think that, you know, by referring to the past votes from back in the 90s and the most recent one being nearly 10 years ago, I think that it actually could be said that there's every reason to believe that the people could feel differently because our population has changed dramatically since then. But that aside, I actually want to come back to the potential taxation and the potential language change. I hear what you said, and also Councillor Medvedji, as far as the potential for a new taxing district, and there is, you know, a risk that could come forward. My feeling is that having language about the money specifically, as opposed to there needs to be a vote, but tying that specifically to should there be a moment when Clark County is asked to pay, when Clark County residents are asked to pay for TriMet operations, or whatever it is, we can be broad in that, that is when a vote would be required, or that is when we would not be supportive of it. I feel like that's actually a stronger position. And I'd happily work on some language. Since we're kind of doing this on the fly, I don't have it in front of me right now, but if there is concern about taxation of Clark County residents somehow weaseling its way in, which I think we should be very vigilant about, then let's have language that actually addresses that, so that we can be vigilant about it as we move forward. What I have heard is that both in the city of Vancouver and very explicitly from CTRAN, this has been a part of the conversation all the way. And while there may be some in Oregon who disagree and think that we should pay for TriMet, I know that absolutely the management at CTRAN feels very differently and is prepared to lead that charge to defend Clark County taxpayers. So I'd really recommend that we have language that joins in that effort and keeps us more relevant in the conversation.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Councilor Rylander.
Just in total, keeping it short and sweet, I believe that this resolution with any slight modifications or changes actually based on the feedback that I have gotten and am getting from the interactions with the citizens of Clark County generally embodies their feelings and their concerns. So I think we're on the right track.
And additional language can be proposed as this goes forward for sure. So let's talk about that if we may. Would this be on the agenda on July 9th? If this were on the agenda for Tuesday, July 19, then what would precede that between now and July 19? Kathleen?
The draft resolution will come back during council time. We can probably do this by next Wednesday, and once the council has the full or the majority support, then we can put it on the July 19th hearing
So
day.
that would be on the 6th, that it would be on our agenda for council time.
Yes, July 6th.
If counselors could email me their proposed changes, I can create, like I've done in the past, a version with different colors so that you all can see the proposed changes that are being made.
So I guess I would move that we put this on the July 6th council time agenda and move it then to the earliest agenda for vote, which I presume then the earliest would be July 19. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So that would be a motion, if there is a second.
I'll second it.
I'll second
I
that.
lost the date though. Was that a Tuesday or actual?
It's Tuesday. I'm sorry, I said council time for July 6th. That's Wednesday.
It is. It is.
And then it
council-
would go for a vote at the council meeting on Tuesday, July 19.
Yeah, I was just trying to keep it in the back of my mind, the comments from earlier this morning. And if my memory serves, Councilor Olson had raised the idea too of the kind of business that we take during council time. And I certainly don't want this more confusing for the public. We're always intending more transparency. So I'm not asking for a change, but I was trying to be mindful of what we said earlier today, and we do need to look at the kind of business we take up during council time and when we take votes and public hearings on Tuesdays.
Right. So does it make sense then if it would be on a Wednesday council time agenda for discussion and on a Tuesday council agenda, July 19 for vote? Does that make sense? Okay. So that motion has been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed. So this will go forward by unanimous vote of those present today. Thank you all very much. And we now move to councilor reports.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Councilor Lentz.
Unfortunately, my counselor report needs to be that because our meeting was only scheduled for an hour and a half, I have a conflicting appointment, so I am going to have to depart. But wanted to make a comment for the public in general that with our Independence Day holiday coming up, while some jurisdictions don't have fireworks, there are a lot of community events going on, and one of them is the Summerfest event on July 3rd at the National Historic Trust down at Officers Row and on the parade grounds at the fort, and it'll be a fun event on Sunday, July 3rd for all the community to come out, and hope to see folks celebrating our independence a day early before your own family and friend celebration. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Other counselor reports. I have two. One is that there was discussion at the time that we had the public safety sales tax spreadsheets that were presented by our finance director, that we would follow those discussions up with more detailed discussion on how the remainder of the funds coming to the county in its 60% portion, how those funds would be spent. We've talked a lot about the expenses associated with body cams and dash cams. Now let's move it forward to discussion about what is the sheriff's needs in the jail for corrections people, should the jail be expanded, etc. But the point being, how else will those funds be used? So I would propose that we have on July 13, that is a Wednesday, is it not? Yes, that for July 13, we have a discussion of that as a work session. And I bring it up now rather than during work session requests because it's just coming up in my mind right now. And so I would put that forward as a suggestion of something that we do because the public wants to know and has a right to know how else those funds would be expended by the county should that taxation be passed. Does that sound reasonable? Then there would be full open discussion of it. Okay. Councilor Medvigi, do you have any objection? Okay, great.
Yeah,
So
no
let's do that.
objection. And some of those issues we're also discussing in Law and Justice as well, specifically for the jail model. So I think that's not as transparent to the public. So I fully support an additional time being spent at council time.
Great. And then the second thing I'd like to report on was a very interesting discussion last night at the Public Health Advisory Council meeting. It actually was something just added to the agenda at the last minute because of the passage of the Roe versus Wade discussion at the Supreme Court as it came to pass. Apparently, public health and others associated with public health have gotten a number of requests lately. Well, how is it changed in Washington? Is it changed in Washington? What is different as far as right to privacy? Is that affected at all? So there are a lot of questions from people, and the group talked about it for an hour last night in terms of how to best respond to those inquiries. And it was decided, going down to the bottom line now, that public health will have on its website and making available to people who ask the links that are to DOH from the state of Washington that outline what are the changes nationally and what are any changes in the state. And it's a really good website. We examined it last night. It is current, but it will be maintained to be current. So there will be links added from CDC because apparently they're coming to the table with some good things too. It was decided not to put the links of the many individual providers that wanted to maybe have their information available. It was felt like having this be the official platform would be better. So that's what was decided on that. But a second issue came up that frankly, I was not familiar with before, but it was very interesting. There is a free fridge program in Clark County and throughout the nation where people plug in a refrigerator and have it be kept at the proper temperature out in their front yards and make available food to those who have food insecurities. And that could be anything from wrapped items that people buy from the store, or it could be family leftovers that are put out there in the fridge. And the question is how to handle that from a public safety, public health perspective in Clark County, realizing that now it is not a big program because there are only 3 fridges that have started in this. But they were examined by some of the staff from public health. And yes, indeed, the temperature in there was right, was what it should have been. But the contents did involve some family leftovers. And whether or not those things, those kinds of foods meet with public health requirements, is a matter that is very much of concern because of the possibility of foodborne illnesses. So that is going to be investigated by public health by convening an ethics committee with about 60 other stakeholders in the issue, including homeless and people who are involved in food banks and you name it, from every aspect to make a recommendation to public health on how to handle this. So I thought that was very interesting because undoubtedly it is a program that would catch on and grow like Topsy probably because so many people do care about those with food insecurities. But how to best handle getting the food to them is the question. So anyway, that's all I had for council reports. Are there others? Okay, work session requests.
Yes, Council, we have one request today. I know public health staff have had some informal conversations, one-on-ones with counselors regarding the public health fees. And so this is a work session request for next Wednesday to talk about environmental public health fees and to provide direction to staff as they're getting ready for the budget process. And I do believe that some of our public health staff is on today if there's any specific questions about the work session request.
Looks like Dr. Melnick is here. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm here, and I also have Jeff Harbison, our Administrative Services Director, and Brian Schlottman, our Environmental Public Health Director, on as well, in case there are any questions.
Had I known you were going to be here, you could have reported on the free fridge program.
I couldn't have done a better job than you. You articulated it perfectly.
You're too kind. Are there any questions from council or comments or anything on the fees? You did provide a good one-on-one discussion with us, and that's probably what answered the questions. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Is there anything else, Kathleen, on the work sessions?
No, I'm not hearing any objections, so we'll go ahead and get that scheduled for next week.
Good. For July 6th. Lindsay, on policy.
Just one quick thing. I sent you the draft work plan for the Vancouver Lake consultants. So if you have any comments from that, they're asking for comments by next week. I don't have any questions or concerns. I know our public health and public works staff is also taking a look at it. So let me know if you have questions and we'll get the comments back to the consultants.
I look forward to kind of the first azimuth check, the first report back towards the end of this first contractual period.
We will now move into executive session, taking approximately 10 minutes. This is regarding real estate potential transaction, RCW 42.30.110, section 1B, as in boy. Will there be a report after? And I think that council will be present. No report after, correct, council?
That's correct. There's no potential action today.
Okay, very good. So it is now 10:44. Let us return to shut down the council time meeting at 10:55.
Hello, the council is extending executive session for 10 more minutes and will be returning at 11:05. Hello, council is extending their executive session for another 5 minutes and will be returning at 11:10 a.m. Thank you. Hello, council is extending their executive session for another 5 minutes and will now be returning at 11:15. Thank you.
Thank you. This is June 29, Wednesday. We have completed the final executive session of the day, and we are moving back into council time, still with a quorum, for the purpose of adjourning. So at this point, the meeting is adjourned.